Welcome to Inspired Change, a new inspirational and motivational broadcast that strives to empower men in a positive way, designed to educate, empower, and inspire even the busiest individual on the go over that first cup of coffee. Please join me in welcoming Gunter Swoboda, international psychologist, author, speaker, and producer.
Welcome everybody to another episode, but this is a special episode. It's our 100th episode of Inspired Change. And for today's podcast, I've invited my wife and partner to join me in one of our conversations that will go for about an hour, maybe a bit less. And so what I thought we'd do in this particular instance is talk about long-term relationships, because fundamentally Lorin and I are in a long-term relationship, and in fact we're beating all the stats. So I'm going to, with my wife, look at all the sort of facets that we believe have worked in our relationship, but also talk a little bit about what some of the sort of relationship researchers like the Gottmans feel are important aspects in creating long-term thriving relationships. And it's thriving not just for the individual but for the relationship as a whole. So, welcome Lorin.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, most welcome. This is always one of those fun things. I really enjoy doing these ones with you. And in particular, I've been looking forward to talking with you about this particular issue, about making a long-standing relationship work. So how about you share with the listeners, and I hope all of you are going to stay tuned for the next 45, 50 minutes to an hour, about what makes a long-term relationship work. So how about you share with us some of the time frames and the stages that you think we've gone through as a long-standing couple. So How many years, babe?
Okay, well, we've known each other for 48 years. We were friends for the first 7 of those years, starting off as part of the same friendship group, getting to know each other gradually over that period of time, becoming closer and stronger in our friendship, and coming to that point where it changed and we became a couple. And we've been a couple for 41 of those years, for 41 years, and we have been married for 36, well, almost, because our anniversary is not till next month. So
that's right.
Yes. So we will have.
And I remember that date.
Yes, we will have been married for 36 years in the beginning of September.
So as you can see here, we really do crack the stats when it comes to being a long-standing couple. And I'm going to add into that from my perspective, it's been wonderful. It's something that I couldn't think not having either you in my life or the relationship as a whole, because I quite often sort of differentiate between the two. And that doesn't mean to say that it's all been, roses and, champagne and bubbles and fireworks. But overall, I think I speak from you too, for your perspective as well. I don't think either of us could bear the idea of not having each other.
No.
Yeah.
That is, in fact, the very reason that we changed our relationship from friendship to being a couple, was that realisation that neither of us could, in fact, tolerate the idea of ever being apart. And that's when the penny dropped, that things had changed. and there was more than friendship. But I think the friendship is absolutely at the core of why it works, is that we genuinely like each other. We are genuinely compatible as human beings. And I think that is a really important core component of a relationship that's going to last through the inevitable ups and downs of anybody's life. And, especially in today's world where that life is likely to go into the 90s. So, yes, I think that it is an important factor in that idea that neither of us can envision a life without each other. That makes it, sort of a very important core aspect of the relationship.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to add to that is because some people are going to interpret this maybe that, you and I are sort of codependent on each other. And I want to, right from the get-go, challenge anybody out there in the audience who's got that idea that that's not what we are going to be talking about. We're not talking about a relationship that's codependent. And I'll differentiate that towards the end of the podcast because I want to talk a bit about attachment. This is a relationship, we're talking about a relationship that's interdependent.
That's right. There's a big difference between dependent, codependent and interdependent. Yeah. And any good relationship, whether it's between a couple, whether it's between friends, whether it's between siblings or parents and children, there's an interdependency in that relationship. People aren't dependent on each other, they are interdependent in the sense that they are attached to each other. And that's where the discussion on attachment and attachment theory is going to be very important.
So let's wind the clock back a bit, okay? So, we've known each other for 48 years. Now, from my part, I was relatively young, and I think when I first met you, I was somewhat incapacitated in an emergency ward with an injury. And you were otherwise disposed at that point. But then later on we became friends, okay? And I want to explore that a little bit about what was it that actually got us together as friends from your perspective?
Well, I think it was just the usual. We knew of each other through mutual friends. Once we met, when we met again, we would automatically talk to each other, get to know each other. We found that we had mutual friends. We ended up being part of a fairly solid friendship group, people who often spent time together. We came and went in terms of other relationships. Both of us, during that 7 odd years when we were just friends, had other relationships. And romantic relationships and, did all sorts of things with our lives. But
It was the 70s.
It was the 70s. It was a wonderful time. But we connected.
Great music.
Yes, the best. We connected with each other intellectually and as friends. And we found ourselves spending more and more time talking to each other about important issues and getting to know each other as human beings and forming that friendship that is at the very core of our relationship.
Yeah, I found that really, really important too, is that, I'm not suggesting that everybody should have, the same interests. We certainly didn't have all the same interests, but we had enough going there to really bring us together. Being able to talk about, who we are as people, philosophy, politics, science, psychology, all of that was we shared a very deep-rooted connection on those things.
But we also enjoyed the same music, the same movies, the same food.
Yep.
All those other aspects of being connected and enjoying each other's company. That's important in a relationship as well. Yeah,
although I don't think you ever forgave me for taking you to The Shining.
That wasn't me that suffered through that, darling. It was the person we took with us.
Yes, that's true. So just a hint out there, if anyone wants to watch The Shining, make sure that the person you're watching it with is not pregnant.
And understands what they're going to be confronted with.
Yes. So this friendship, we nurtured that too. I mean, there was certain things that we didn't necessarily see eye to eye on, but we appreciated those differences in our opinions, and we still do that.
Well, I mean, we're two individual people, both with our own histories and backgrounds, both with our own careers and our own experiences. And although we meet in a very compatible space, we do still bring our own individuality into the relationship. It's not like we've become the one person. That sort of concept people have of being two halves of a whole, you know, which suggests that you sort of mirror twins rather than two individuals who are attached to each other.
or alternatively deficient if you don't have the other person.
Yes.
So, I agree with that. And I think for us that hasn't been a challenge to maintain our individuality.
No.
We did what often was done in the 70s and the 80s, is we moved in together.
Well, also, we met as equals. There was no suggestion that either of us wished to dominate or control or influence or coerce or bend the other.
Manipulate.
There was no you need to come over to my side of thinking in order for us to be together plan. We both came from a place where we had embraced the understanding of equality, which is respect and cooperation and partnership. So there was never any issues of either one of us needing to give up being themselves in order to be in the relationship, which of course is a seriously dangerous little clue people need to take note of when they're forming relationships. If they're expected to give up who they are, then this is not a good place to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I work with enough men, and certainly often boys too, who are under extraordinary pressure to stop being who they are, or who are coerced to stop doing what they do. Now, some boys need to stop doing what they're doing, at least reduce it. But a lot of times there's very toxic elements in that. For example, making you change your friendships, or distancing yourself from the family.
I find it fascinating that what is really old wives' wisdom, which has been known forever, has been forgotten. You cannot change people. You shouldn't even try. And if you think they need to change, why do you think you love them? And if someone thinks they need to change you, then they obviously don't love you for who you are. So this relationship is at risk right from the beginning. Relationships need to be where people actually like each other the way they are.
Yeah, I think that's a really important factor in it. The other thing I think that's really, really important in this is that whole notion of, not just sharing compatibilities like, being interested in similar subjects, but actually sharing values. And I think that, like for a lot of companies, it's interesting that, we can talk about shared values, but are they really there in action?
Well, of course, this is something that usually takes a bit of time to discover. And so often it's a smart move not to rush into forming a permanent relationship with someone you don't actually know. Especially in today's world where people come from such different places that you don't even know anything about their background other than what they have told you. It's important, I think, to give yourself time to get to know someone and to find out if what they value in life is, in fact, similar and in alignment with what you value in life. And that's not just, the big picture stuff about political orientation or religious belief. It's also about how money should be dealt with. Whether you both want children and how you wish to approach that process of raising children, and whether you both agree with prioritising children